Okay, it's on there now. So just read the script in the beginning, and then I'll say hi to you guys. Oi, pessoal. Welcome to the second edition of the Brazil podcast. I am Mauricio Savarese, an independent journalist from São Paulo. I'm a former Reuters Brazil correspondent, and I used to work for UOL, Brazil's biggest online news site. I'm a former Reuters Brazil correspondent, and also used to work for UOL, Brazil's biggest online news site. I also run a blog called The Brazilian Operating in This Area. The Brazil podcast brings together foreign and domestic journalists and experts for a weekly discussion covering all the biggest news from Brazil. Our producer is Sam Cowie, a journalist based in Rio. Hi, Sam.
Hi, Mauricio.
This week's guests are Leonardo Macario, a film scholar based in Rio. And then you have to say hi, Leonardo.
Hi, Mauricio.
And Ben Tavener, a multimedia journalist based in São Paulo.
Hi there, Mauricio.
Welcome, guys, to the second edition of the Brazil podcast. And then can I go for the Olympic theme then?
Yeah. So I've made a couple of notes there. Maybe just spend 5 minutes working out what you're going to say. It'll make it a lot easier for everybody in the long run. So remember, especially for me, remember that some people listening, just make maybe a quick bullet points of things you want to say to introduce the topic. To introduce the topic, you want about 45 seconds to a minute. So this is what's happening. I've put some suggestions down there.
That's good. So I'll briefly introduce the topic, and I think Leo is going to jump in and ask a few questions, isn't it?
Yeah, that would be best. Yeah. So I think it would be best if let's say. Yeah, Leo's going to ask you a few questions. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. We'll see how
Q&A, and then open up to the floor, I guess, if you want to keep it.
That'll be good. Yeah. So this week's first topic is Rio Olympic preparations, which this week were described as the worst ever by one of the members of the IOC. Okay, so can I go on just from this one and just start a rant in a way?
Yeah.
Okay. So a deputy chairman of the IOC, an Australian who has a 20-year experience of Olympic preparations, has said that Rio preparations for the Olympics were even worse than Athens, which is regarded as the benchmark for terrible Olympic preparations.
Sorry, there's background noise coming from somewhere. I can't.
Okay. So I'll do it again.
Yeah, please. Sorry.
No problem. This week's first topic is Rio's Olympic preparations, which this week were described as the worst ever by one of the members of the IOC. Okay, can I go on?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's background noise coming from somewhere.
Yeah, that's what I noticed. It's not here. Is it
coming from Leo?
Oh yeah, Leo are in the living room.
Oh no. Yes, I'm in the living room.
Okay, so just in case anyone comes in, I can just shut your mic for a second, okay. and then I'll put you back. I'll go again. This week's first topic is Rio's preparation. This week's first topic is Rio's Olympic preparations, which this week were described as the worst ever by one of the members of the IOC. A very powerful member who comes from Australia and has loads of experience in Olympic preparations. He compared Rio's preparations to some of the worst he faced in his tenure at the IOC, and he put it at a level below Athens, which is considered a benchmark for terrible Olympic preparations. As far as I know, there are some people in the IOC which are not happy with the Rio preparations, but they don't want to make it look like they were too late in making those calls of criticism. Some of them are sparing Rio Mayor Eduardo Paes because he seems to be the one who's trying to address the difficulties they're having there. So this looks like 2 years of very intense debate and very...
Guys, there's all kinds of background noise going on here. Like
Yeah, I'll start from the middle then.
Yeah, sure.
So this member of the IOC is a very powerful Australian member who was in charge of the Sydney Olympics preparations, and he understands a lot about those. He put Rio's below Athens, which is considered a benchmark for terrible Olympic preparations. I know from people I talk to and have a lot of experience with IOC statements that there is a huge divide in the IOC. People who are worried about the Olympics but still think that Rio can do it, and some others think that it's already the case of sending some parts of the Olympics to other cities such as São Paulo, Brasilia, Belo Horizonte, and other places, so Rio doesn't have to concentrate it all. So it's going to be very intense 2 years of this kind of debate of worst ever, good enough, worst ever, good enough. We're going to see that seesaw for a long, long time, I suppose. Is this? I talked for
Mauricio.
35 seconds.
No, that's good. That's good. That's good. That's good. So
So
now
I'll jump in. I'll jump in.
Mm-hmm.
so let me think how we can bring this in. So Maurizio, let me ask. So you should ask Leo. Perhaps Leo, as you're a citizen of Rio de Janeiro, what's your take on this?
Mm-hmm. Rio, as a citizen of Rio, what's your take on this and the atmosphere for the Olympics? Do people in Rio think of that?
Say that again. You said Rio as opposed to Leo.
Sorry. Leo, what's your take as a Rio citizen about all the concerns with the Olympics?
I was already thinking that this would happen as much as we are seeing this with the World Cup. We're going to see this with the Olympics, because from one side is the interest is to go further on the construction sites and stuff like that, and on the other side, I'm sorry, guys.
No problem. No problem. We were just pre-debating. We can add it. So just one thing I probably should say. Just be careful with the ums in the middle, because it's difficult to cut them. If you need,
it's not so difficult to cut them. Yeah. Don't worry, it's not so difficult.
Oh, that's good.
The problem is that the cats are doing all the crazy stuff that they can right now.
The cat's in your house.
Oh yes. I think that was the problem with this.
They make good barbecue, you know that.
Yeah, but try to say that to my wife.
If you could move and just ask the question, I'll follow. No, I'll have to ask the question again, won't I?
No, I don't think I don't think you do.
Okay.
I think Sam already got your answer. Your question. The problem is, I think that's not the best way. I think maybe I can start asking Mauricio about his experience.
Yeah, we need one opening question. We need one opening question to be addressed.
So I can. Okay.
Okay.
We need one question from Maurizio to you, Leo.
Okay, so I can jump.
So that you can turn it back on him.
So you could probably say that Mayor Eduardo Paes he dismissed the criticism and said, I mean, he accepted actually. He said that Rio is going to work very hard to do it, but still people in the city are more focused on the World Cup. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'll ask the question, Leo. So what's the atmosphere in Rio at this moment? Leo, what's the atmosphere in Rio at this moment? Do people have concerns about the Olympics, or are they still focused in the World Cup?
Oh, they are undoubtedly more focused in the World Cup. As we know about the things we were seeing with the World Cup, this will be kind of a back and forth by the organization and Rio government, and so people will try to stretch as much as they can the budget and things like that. I don't think this should come as a surprise, because this kind of back and forth is going on for so long. I saw that happening on other sides as well. I think you have more to say about this than me, Mauricio, as you covered already 2 Olympics.
Well, I could say that in Rio, the IOC actually took a long time to make a public statement, and in a way, those addresses are a way to save face from any terrible mistakes that they notice in just a short time before the Olympics. There was enough pressure on them 2 years ago to make a public statement to say Rio doesn't have any time to lose, and they. Because of the elections in the IOC, which elected Thomas Bach very recently, they were much more worried about electing a president than with the Olympic preparations. That's the criticism that members of the IOC have made as well. So, I think the World Cup is going to be a good reference in a way, because despite all the expectation being put very low, I think it's going to be a reasonable World Cup to the very least, and people are going to see that Brazil, in a way, although it was a last-minute dash, that things worked. And in the Olympics, it won't be very different to my perception. So the IOC is trying to save face at this moment, is making pressure on Rio to do the World Cup, to do the Olympic preparations faster than they were actually thinking they could. If you look at Deodoro in the north of Rio, which is a huge complex in the north of Rio, which is...
It's in the west, it's in the west, it's in the west.
Sorry.
Don't worry.
So if you look at Deodoro, one of the key parts of the Olympics, in the west of Rio, there's nothing actually built there. So there is reason for concern. The seesaw is going to continue, but the IOC at this moment, they know it's not as dramatic as they like to put. You cannot buy some of the declarations by face value, and until the Olympics begin, there's going to be some time to address all the grievances that the specific federations have, the specific concerns they have about their sport. I would say the Olympic preparations are always difficult. Rio is very late, of course, but in the end, it's going to work out. That's my impression.
Okay, good.
Do we have reasonable radio there?
Yeah, we've got good radio. Yeah, but let's try and get some more. Let's try and keep the answers 30 seconds to 45 seconds, a minute maximum. We're about just over a minute there, but it's all right. We can cut it and stuff. So let's get. Let me ask you something, Maurizio.
Do that.
So maybe give a how we could do this. So open it up to me and Ben now.
Okay. So I'll ask you about London. Does that make any sense?
No. I'm going to ask you. You're the expert.
Okay.
So open the conversation up to me and Ben. So okay. Say something like Sam and Ben. What have you got anything to say about this?
Okay. Sam, Ben, do you have anything to say about this as well?
Yeah, I'd like to ask you, Maurizio. In Beijing, was the local media coverage? How was the local media coverage compared to Brazil's media coverage?
Oh, it was very democratic in China, wasn't it?
Sorry, that's the wrong question. How was the international media coverage of the preparations different?
Well,
from Beijing?
I would say in the run-up to big sporting events, there's loads of criticism, and in Beijing's case, for example, it was very much on the torch relay and all that it meant for China to be parading their skills and their fantastic improvements. But people prefer to take on the human rights issues. They prefer to talk about Tibet. So the national media was very protective, of course, since it's a dictatorship, and they were very protective about the games. But international media hammered not only the Olympics but the torch relay for months and months and months. If you go to London, of course, it's not as troublesome as it was in China. But there were concerns 1 year before the Olympics because of the London riots. After that, because of the rain, and I mean, big sporting events, they make people crazy, don't they? I mean, I remember 1 week before the Olympics kicked off in London, the Times, which is this very straight-faced newspaper, they published an editorial against St. Peter because it was raining too much. So I think that Rio is going to get a lot of criticism for the next 2 years.
Mhm.
A good chunk of it will be fair criticism, and there's loads of things they have to address. But there's going to be another part of it which is just something you don't buy for the face value. And when 19, if I'm not mistaken, 19 out of the 20 federations, no, sorry, I'll correct that information. Most of the international federations, sporting federations, they made criticism about the Rio preparations. And some of them, you can actually see that this was more of a political effort than anything else. For example, the Basketball Association complained about Rio's preparation for the Olympics, but most of the facilities are going to be basically imported from London. They are ready already. So there isn't much of a trick in that. There is a political statement of the IOC trying to rush Rio because they have to be rushed. Trying to save face because it took too long for them to speak out.
Okay. This is too long.
Yeah, sorry.
Don't worry. Another question I have for you, with regards to the London riots, how does the situation with the London riots, which happened in 2011, do you think that Rio is suffering from greater hysteria over the protests that have happened in Rio? Do you think the hysteria is greater for Rio than it was for London at that time?
I do, but I think Rio has another thing that London didn't as much, which is the city violence, which is surely bigger in Rio than it was in London. I would say that the riots are somehow comparable to the protests because they are the kind of reaction you really don't expect until it is out. And violence is something that Brazilians and Cariocas have to deal with every day. I think in Rio they are putting the two together and making a mix that is not exactly reflecting what Rio is about.
Guys, there's a microwave or something going on in the background.
Yes, I'll have to wait for a few seconds. Otherwise,
Don't worry.
I'll be killed.
Basically, what we're saying is that there's this tradition of Olympic nagging always, and that with Rio it's pretty much fair, but it's had so much complaint. There have been so many complaints about the World Cup and the security that it can't win. It probably couldn't win even if it was on time, even if it came up, a year ahead and said, "Look, we're ready." They'd probably still say, "No, you're not. Look at all this stuff that's not quite there." If they had a go at London, which was probably many people say was the best organised, don't they? Mm-hmm. Then what's Rio really got to perform against,
I'll say that again after the microwave is off, but my impression is that the games in Rio, they are very different from the games of London because in London every Olympic Games has a theme in a way. In China, it was China's rise into stardom in a way, and
start this again. Start this again once the microphone's on.
Okay, so every Olympic Games have their theme in a way. If we look at the last ones, the ones that I've covered, Beijing 2008 was to show China had risen to stardom and was an important country in the world. The London Olympics, they weren't meant to be that, but in the end, they became the game of the financial crisis. Just look by the amount of money China spent on Beijing and the amount of money London spent. They are very different amounts, and the facilities to build in Beijing are much more complex than the facilities in London. Rio is South America's chance in a way, is to see whether South America, I would say Latin America overall. They don't because of Mexico City hosted it in 1968, but it is like South America is an important region of the country, and not exactly Brazil, but South America as a whole region. They're developing a totally unused part of the city, which is Barra da Tijuca. It's a place very well connected to the rich, but the place where they're building the Olympic Park really isn't. So they're using for those purposes as well. I would say that. What else can I say about that? I'm actually wondering what else I can say. I think I think the international community is not that used to doing big events in South America. So they haven't learned in a way what is the Brazilian way of dealing with these issues, which is not that different from Colombia, Peru, Chile, or Argentina. So these next 2 years are going to be this seesaw between developed countries which have hosted this event before and know how to do it, and a new continent that is learning how to do it and has to prove it's up to the task. So it's going to be interesting because there's a very big gap between those two, and Rio Olympics are different from Beijing and London in that sense.
Mauricio, let me ask you a question. Do you think Rio's getting a bit of a hard time regarding this Olympic? Do you think Rio's getting? Sorry, there's noise. Sorry. Do you think, Mauricio? Let me ask you a question. Do you believe that Rio's getting a bit of a hard time with regards to its Olympic preparations?
No doubt, and I would say it is one of the difficulties you have when you have to deal with three different levels of government. They have to deal with the city hall, they have to deal with the state government, and they have to deal with the federal government. So that's more tricky than just going to China and having Hu Jintao deciding whatever's going to happen. Rio is also tricky because let me go again because there was noise. It is also tricky for Rio because they are not used to the Olympic Games, to the whole meaning of the Olympic Games. Most Cariocas would say that the World Cup is a bigger event than the Olympics, and it's exactly the opposite. So it's going to take the end of the World Cup for Cariocas to realize they have to be up for the task. It's not a simple task at all. I don't think they are late in a way that is going to kill the whole project, but they have to speed up, no doubt.
Okay, that was good. I think we got off to a bit of a rough start there, but I think altogether we've got some good stuff there.
Okay. Should I move on to...
Ben, do you agree there? Do you think we've got some good stuff there?
I don't know how much of it has been recorded without the noise of somebody making their dinner in the background.
I think we've got enough. I mean,
was what I said? I didn't know what was actually being used and what was just kind of us preparing. Was what I said, was that part of the actual thing? Because I was
I think it will be. I'm going to try and get everyone's. Everyone's question in there somewhere.
I mean, the only thing that I would have added was the difference between how Eduardo Paes and how the organising committee dealt with it. Eduardo Paes came out straight away.
All right, let's go with this then. Let's go with this. So introduce yourself, as in, can I just say something, or make yourself heard, basically, on the program.
It's Ben Taverner here. I just thought I'd make the point that there was kind of a real difference. I felt difference anyway between the way that the Rio Mayor Eduardo Paes reacted to it and the way the local organising committee reacted. Eduardo Paes seemed to put his hand up very quickly and say, okay, we've got to take this on the chin, we've got to work with zeal and dedication to get everything right. It seemed like he knew what the outside world wanted to hear, whereas the organising committee rushed out a statement really pretty quickly and said, okay, people, the time for sniping and making these complaints about the way that the progress of preparation, that time has gone. You've really just got to let us get on with it. And actually, the important line they put in there was and engaging with society, because I don't think Brazil's going to have much of a problem getting Brazil engaged with the World Cup, whichever way it is, either through protest or going to the stadiums. But there's a big chunk of the Olympics that people just don't know what it is. And on a world scale, the Olympics have to outrank the World Cup. So I think that there's going to be something. I think that's quite a kind of a point that needs to be made, that Brazil has work to do, not just on the stadium and all the venues and all the infrastructure around the world around the Olympics, but actually on engaging with society. And that Olympic committee statement came out pretty sharp, saying basically, we're going to do everything on time, to budget. Let us get on with it.
That makes a lot of sense. And just to wrap this up, there's one thing that also that shows that this whole crisis. It shows that the president of the Brazilian Olympic Committee, Carlos Nusman, wasn't really the reason why Brazil won the bid, was it? I mean, it was basically because of President Lula's escorting all members of the IOC in Copenhagen. So it clearly shows that Nusman doesn't have the technical abilities to not only to make a good bid, but to make good games. And when they say there's going to be an IOC intervention in Rio, they're actually showing that Nuzman doesn't have what it takes to do it.
Can I just add something?
course.
The thing that I remember from the Pan American Games in '97, is that correct? On
2007.
2007. So I'll go from there. The thing I remember with the Pan American Games in 2007 is that the citizens of Rio were heavily involved, and they kind of liked the event. They approved the chance of seeing all the sports. So I think it will be a great moment for Rio citizens. The thing is, we have to again talk about this face value that Mauricio kept repeating, and that back and forth, that seesaw, because Paes is really media savvy. He knows what to say. He understood that he couldn't just make it was not his chance to say, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, stuff. He should point a finger to himself. So it was a chance for him to do so.
Yeah, that makes sense. He's seen by the Olympic Committee as the one who's helping solve the situation in Rio, whereas Carlos Alberto Nuzman, well, is not really that man, is he?
No.
Okay, so should we move on?
Yeah, I think let's move on. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll read it and we'll follow from there. Our second topic for this week is the rise in the value of Brazil's social welfare program, Bolsa Familia. President Dilma Rousseff announced on Labor Day. President Dilma Rousseff announced that on Labor Day, May the 1st, that the value of Bolsa Familia would rise by 10%. Bolsa Familia is a conditional cash transfer program. Poor families are awarded a monthly cash allowance on the condition that children go to school and are regularly vaccinated.
Can I just ask, did she not make the speech on April the 30th, the day before?
Can
Can I say that in a different way?
Because I think she made the announcement in Brasilia on the first day, but she announced it on TV on May the 1st. That's why the opposition went for that. Should we keep it, or should we go for March 31st?
It was April the 30th that she made the speech.
April 30th.
It was the eve of Labor Day.
I see.
Thing that didn't come through was the 4.5 didn't come through on the income tax, didn't come through till May the 1st. But she announced the Bolsa Familia 10%, and what else was it? Oh yeah, and the pensions going up by the same amount on April the 30th.
And the minimum wage, I think, as well, wasn't it?
Yeah.
No, a minimum wage has a kind of a trigger, and every year they are raised by the difference between inflation and GDP.
But it was announced on the same. Was it announced on the same day? Or?
That national address was on April the 30th, but she didn't make the 4.5 mark. That wasn't actually clarified till the day after.
Okay, so should I just take it off, or just put April 30?
Just say this. Just say this week.
Okay, this week sounds better.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. No, thank you very much for the tip, man.
Yeah, cheers.
Let me just take them up. Our second topic for this week is the rise in the value of Brazil's social welfare program, Bolsa Familia. President Dilma Rousseff announced this week that the value of Bolsa Familia would rise by 10%. Bolsa Familia is a conditional cash transfer program. I'll read again because there was some noise. Bolsa Familia is a conditional cash transfer program. Poor families are awarded a monthly cash allowance on the condition that children go to school and are regularly vaccinated.
Okay. Yeah, good.
So I'll ask Ben the question, and I'll link that to the polls. Does that make any sense?
Sam's going to talk on this one, isn't he?
Yeah. I mean, I know quite a lot about Bolsa Familia. Yeah.
Go with Sam first, and then I'll chime in later.
That's good. Sam, does this have anything to do with President Dilma Rousseff not doing that well in the polls at the moment?
Well, I mean, she's still ahead, so I mean, to say that she's not doing that well, I think is a bit of an overstatement.
Mm-hmm.
But, no, I don't think so. I'm pretty sure that the value of Bolsa Familia was raised. There's some noise there. Let me start again.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you want me to ask again?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So I'll actually give the figures instead of saying she's not doing that well. So, Sam, do you think this has anything to do with President Dilma dropping a few points in the polls published this week again?
I don't think it's directly because of that. I think this was planned beforehand. I would say I'm pretty sure that the value of Bolsa Familia rises each year, and that this time last year it rose at the. Did it not rise at the same time this time? There's loads of noise, man. Shit, sorry. Like
let me see if this was actually here. Just a second.
Sorry, no worries.
It's because I have someone with me now. Just a second.
Don't worry.
Deixa só aqui só pouquinho.
God, these non-radio people.
You know it, innit, Ben?
I've made the whole house shut its face.
I'm usually sitting here with a blanket over my head.
Carpet along the walls.
So shall we do it again?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay. So Sam, do you think this race has anything to do with President Dilma dropping a few points in the polls published last week?
I don't think so. No, the value of Bolsa Familia rises regularly. It rose last year. It rose the year before. So I don't think this is a direct result of that. No, I think this is something that's being understood as some kind of election strategy. But I don't think that's the reality. No.
Okay. So should I move on to Ben, or should I ask you more?
Whatever you feel. Let's just get into a conversation and see what comes up.
Okay.
Do you want me to jump in?
Do you guys think that Bolsa Familia is going to play any role in the election this year? Because in 2010 there were loads of criticism from the opposition in that sense. They were saying that Bolsa Familia was actually buying out votes, but at the same time they said they wouldn't scrap it off if they were elected. Do you think this is going to play any role in the elections?
Well, I think it plays a role in every single election. I think this concept of offering social assistance in return for votes. I think to call that vote buying is. I think that's a bit contrived, to be honest.
Ben, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think it's a bit too much. But of course, at this point, when Rousev's popularity is going down in the poll, the headline that the Bolsa Familia is going up 10%, of course, is nice. And in fact, her two nearest rivals, Aécio Neves and Eduardo Campos, both said that speech that she made ahead of Labor Day was really over the top and overly election orientated. They really didn't like it. But I mean. And that 10% figure, as I say, it plays very nicely to her, and it can't hurt, certainly. But then the questions have to come as, how much is that really? How much will people really be better off with the state of inflation that we've got at the moment? And really, it's not much of a gain, as I'm sure Sam will tell you. The actual figure, the actual amount of money that these people get, it's not a subsidy really. It's a bit of help. So people that try and say this is buying people, they don't know how much money they're talking about.
Exactly. This 10% will work out as roughly 7 reais per child per month. There's this idea that people that are on Bolsa Familia are like living the life of Riley, and it's really not that. Bolsa Familia, essentially, and the most important thing about Bolsa Familia is that it allows poor families to plan, the most very basic planning, as in what can we do to ensure that we all have one meal, maybe 2 meals a day for the whole month.
I've done a couple. Sorry.
Go for it. Yeah.
And I've spoken to people on this as well, and they said it doesn't mean that we're suddenly buying a car. It just means that perhaps this month we can buy fresh vegetables, because sometimes they're not cheap. We went through Tomato Gate here in Brazil. It doesn't mean that I'm suddenly buying, a new TV on it, which is a lot of the headlines have gone out recently and over the last few years, that Brazil's economic growth has helped people buy TVs and cars. That's not what this is. This is slightly better clothes, slightly better food. And one of the best things about Bolsa Familia is that you have to you have to work as a family unit. All of your kids have to go to school. So what isn't happening now is that the families aren't sending off the oldest child to work. Every child has to go to school. Every child has to get vaccinated.
Exactly. And what a lot of people don't realise as well is that there is actually like quite a lot of return on Bolsa Familia. For every one real the government spends. Sorry, there's noise there.
Yeah, I wish I could do something about that, if you understand what I mean. But
yeah, sure.
Give me 1 minute, please. And if I may add one thing that we can comment as well on Bolsa Familia is that, especially if you go to the northeast or if you go to the poorer regions of Brazil, people actually want to leave Bolsa Familia. They want other people who don't have it to have it, and it is a kind of they're really proud when they leave Bolsa Familia. I talked to a few of these families when I was covering the campaign trail in 2010, and they basically didn't want to have Bolsa Familia at all. They just needed it. They just needed to have it, and because of that, of course, they were seen as PT supporters. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they were getting a better deal from the opposition, and that's the case that the opposition has to make. I mean, how is the deal going to be better for them?
Exactly. And what a lot of people don't realise as well is that Bolsa Familia actually like stimulates the economy. You know, for every R1 spent on Bolsa Familia, the government gets back R1.85. So that's stimulating growth in areas which are not economically developed.
Yeah, just picking up on what Mauricio said. Dilma's closest rival in this election coming up, Aécio Neves, has come out this week and said, "I can't promise that things are going to be better under us." So if they're not, in the run up to this election, if they're not able to say to these millions of people, and over this last decade, they say that 35-40 million people have been brought out of poverty to some extent. If the opposition hasn't got anything to say to them at this stage, then it's no wonder that Dilma is still leading in the polls.
Absolutely.
Leo, do you have anything to add?
No, I don't have much to add here. I think you got it all covered. I think the only thing I was trying to find here, the figure, the quantities that are returned to the government, not only because of the economic growth that Sam talked about, but because people don't pick it up at the bank.
Yeah.
And it is not a small figure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but we'll see how that plays out in the elections and how big that impact is. I suppose Lula's support is still more important in a way than Bolsa Familia, because Bolsa Familia votes in a way are reasonably locked up for PT as far as I'm concerned, but they're not enough to win any elections, are they? You have to broaden your base, and if you want to look at a national election, you have to target more than Bolsa Familia benefiters, and it's going to be an interesting election, hopefully. Should we go to the parade now?
I mean, we were getting into quite a good conversation there, though.
Something on Lula. It was just directly related to what you were saying, because and this week, of course, we've had this will he, won't we, with Lula. Will he be replacing Dilma as this year's PT presidential candidate? And I think they've played on it a lot. They could have come out, they have come out before and said, no, it's not, it's Dilma. But they've played it for all it's worth, and up to this week, and I'm sure up to this week with the conference we saw in São Paulo, and I'm sure the next unveiling of Dilma as their candidate in June, they will bring Lula back out again, and the will they bring Lula in, will they not bring him in for the next candidate will still be there. They've been really shrewd. They've brought him in this time, and they still haven't answered the question 100%. And of course, they can change the candidate up to 3 weeks before the elections, and now they're saying that Lula will be kept kind of close to the campaign, if not running the campaign. So I think you're absolutely right. Lula will be key to this. And some of those polls conducted don't just ask are you going to vote for Dilma? Some of the questions, some of the polls just ask who you're going to vote for, and Lula still comes up as a fairly sizable proportion of responses, even if people know that he's probably not going to be on the ticket.
That makes a lot of sense. And just to finish from me, one of the things that people are not counting as much is that Dilma is going to have it's very likely she's going to have a push in the final weeks, because Aécio Neves and Eduardo Campos, the two main candidates in the opposition, I mean, there's only one spot in the second round, if there is any, for an opposition candidate. So they're going to have to fight each other at least for a few weeks to have that chance of running against Dilma. And they also have another major concern that Dilma won't have as much, which is getting competitive candidates for governorship. Aécio Neves is going to have to invent a candidate in Minas Gerais, which is his base, because he doesn't have, he's not going to run, and the guy who is his key ally there is not going to run either. So he's going to have a lot of time in Minas Gerais just inventing a candidate, and that takes some of the effort for the elections. One of the other things is that she's going to play a role as well is that Eduardo Campos was an ally of Dilma until very recently, and if there is a point in which he has to choose between Dilma staying in Brasilia for 4 years or Aécio staying for 8, because he's going to run, if he wins, he's going to run for the re-election, I think it can be very different from the scenario we're seeing now.
Sounds good to me.
Interesting stuff, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Should we move on?
Yeah, I think so. I think we've got some good stuff all together there. Yeah, we spoke for about 10 minutes there, I think, and I think, we're looking at maybe even 15 minutes. I think we can move on, yeah. Ben, what do you think?
Yeah, it's fine. There's always more to say, but it's always good that you need to talk about this topic for another many podcasts. So.
Exactly.
Yeah,
after the World Cup. After the World Cup, we'll have 3 months to talk about it.
Yeah, exactly.
So
okay, yeah, let's move on to our next and final topic of the evening. Then, Maurizio, if you'd like to take it away.
Okay, so Ben was actually covering it, so I'll just make the intro and I'll ask about how it was and how big it was, of course, because this is always the question that comes in the end of the parade. So. Finally, for the evening, today marked the 18th edition. Finally, for this evening, today marked the 18th edition of São Paulo's LGBT Pride Parade, which for a long time now has been considered one of the biggest and best Pride marches in the world.
Ben,
our friend Ben
sorry.
was there. Mm-hmm.
Sorry. Was it the 18th? I put that in as a guess. Okay. That's that Rain Man memory I have right there.
Should I just, because I think people know what these marches are about. Should I just ask Ben, because he was covering, and we move on and he talks about all the things he saw instead of reading?
Let's go for it. Just let's okay. As it's the last one, it's not quite so newsy. Let's try and make this like a real nice conversation.
That's good.
Okay.
Ben, you were there covering that. So how was the parade?
Well, it was very noisy. I can still barely hear you actually, because I was up on the floats. One of the perks of being a journalist is you get to see these events from up in the sky, from the middle of the party, and it really was a party. I mean, as you say, this is the 18th one they've run now. They seem to get bigger every year. The official police estimate for this year was about 100,000 people, but I am pretty sure the organisers are going to come out and say that it was more like 5 million. I would guess somewhere in the middle, but it really did feel like millions. The streets were absolutely filled up, and it really brought back memories of those mass protests last year. Apart from the fact that not everybody, but a lot of people were dressed in fancy dress. But it's a really interesting event, and 400,000 people come into São Paulo for it. So it's of course not just a political movement; it's a business. A complete business for São Paulo. What's interesting is that a day before, so yesterday, we had the lesbian walk, which is a traditional feature, the Caminhada Lésbica, and that's really interesting because it focuses on the female and bisexual element, which is often forgotten. One of their criticisms is that that LGBT pride isn't called that; it's called gay pride, and it's far too gay-centric. And I spoke to the first organizer of the Lesbian Walk, and she says it's still very necessary to have that separate event. So yeah, it was really good. Very hot weather, which helped the numbers. I think last year was a bit of a damp squib, but this year was much better. And the main kind of news that we got out of it at the press conference this morning was that Geraldo Alckmin, the São Paulo state governor, announced that Avenida Paulista, that main central avenue business street in the middle of São Paulo, is going to get a gleaming new museum of sexual diversity.
How's that going to work?
Well, they're going to buy up an old house. There's a Casa Rosada in the middle of the very middle of Avenida Paulista. They're going to redo it, and they're going to expand basically an exhibition that they've currently got in República metro station. If you're ever in there, give it a look. It's just basically an art exhibition, but it's interesting, and they're going to they're going to create a museum out of this to try and represent Brazil. And all of its sexual diversity. And one of the biggest points politically made by this year's parade was that not everybody is recognized by the law. And one of the biggest pushes this year was for the so-called gender identity law, which if passed, would greatly help the transgender community, because at the moment they don't have an easy time of it when they change sex, for example. Their history, they have to go back and change everything in their past. This new law would go through and make the recognition of their gender a much simpler affair, and have the state replace all their documents, for example, free of charge, and it would also help with sex reassignment surgery.
Mm-hmm. One of the things I was going to ask you, Formula One is probably the biggest event in São Paulo, and the gay parade here, the LGBT parade in São Paulo, wasn't a big event until 10 years ago or so. Do you think they can compete at this level now for as a business event as well?
I think they probably can. I mean, it's been fairly stable the last few years. Even with not so great weather last year, they still pulled in hundreds of thousands of people, and the government finances it. And clearly, if the government's going to put in 2 million reais, so what's that, $900,000, if they're going to be putting that into the campaign, they clearly think it's worth it, because they get a lot out of that. They say that pumps 220 million reais into the local economy. So the government clearly thinks that it's worth it. The problem they have is convincing non-government companies, non-government bodies. I mean, if you look at the list of sponsors, the only one from outside of the Brazilian government is Netflix. So I think that's the next strategy if they really want to bring in more people, is making more of a deal of it abroad. Because I know that some travel agencies abroad do packages to come to come to Pride in São Paulo. You know, the biggest in the world, and maybe the best.
Sam, Leo, do you have anything to ask?
Let me think. Can
I can ask Ben to talk about the Jean Willis participation.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. Yeah, go for that. That's great. Good radio.
Although we're gonna have to explain.
Yeah, give a brief introduction of who Jean Willis is.
He's your deputy.
Yeah, I know. Not to me, to the audience.
No, I know. Yes. I'm saying it's good for Leo to do it because it's his deputy.
Oh, right. Okay.
No, for me, it's easy because I voted for him. So.
Okay, so let's.
For me, it is to remember that he's a deputy.
Okay, so let's start that from the beginning then. Just so Leo, you jump in and ask about Jean Willis, and then say something like, just to explain who Jean Willis is for people listening, something like that.
Okay. Can I just ask something, Ben? Jean Willis, which is well recognized here because he was a participant in the Big Brother edition. B, because he is federal deputy, and he is he has a strong flag about gay rights, and he is well known in this kind of flag. What was his participation today?
Yeah, as you rightly say, he's gay pride royalty, isn't he? Really. Hello.
Hello.
Sorry, something happened there. Yeah, as you
yes,
rightly.
I'm hearing you.
Yeah, as you rightly say, he's Jean Willis is definitely gay pride royalty here in São Paulo. Last year, I remember he was at the front of the first float next to Marta Suplicy, the culture secretary. And yeah, so normally he's front and center, but today that was different. He didn't come to the press conference in the morning, and he just tweeted to say that he was going to take part in one of the kind of blockers, like the street parties you have in Carnival, the same equivalent, the equivalent that we have at Gay Pride. He said he wanted to focus on the real political message of the campaign, and he said that he thought Pride needed a rethink. Perhaps he thought it's gone too mainstream, too much of a family day out, and not enough down to the core politics. But what he did was take part in just a section of the Pride March, which focused very much on that gender identity law I was just talking about. So yeah, he was there, but he wasn't making a spectacle. That's not the right thing to say. So yes, he was there, but he wasn't front and center as he normally is.
Can I ask a question as well? So, one of the things that worried organizers in the last few years was violence, because there were not only thefts, robberies, but there was also there were also a few brawls in the parades. Did you happen to witness any of that?
No, we know that there were some people detained. I'm not sure if they were arrested. We know there were some people detained and searched, but I think any big organization like this is always going to have that. Last week we had the marijuana march, and there were a few people, checked out by the police, that they had their things searched. But given that that's so many people, I reckon there were over 1 million people there today. For 1 million people to come out onto the street, and for there to be really quite minimal policing, if you compare with the World Cup protests we've had recently, where police have regularly outnumbered protesters, probably says something about the protest movement more than the policing. No, I think today was very much, it was a family day out. There were families there, people of all ages, and the police presence was very kind of subtle. They were there, but they were just looking, and it felt more like carnival than a protest.
Good. It's interesting to see how politicians are now engaging with the event, because until 2002, 2003, when Marta Suplicy was a part of it as a mayor of São Paulo, there weren't any other politicians involved, and now it seems that mainstream politics has somehow embraced the event, haven't they?
I don't think it can choose to ignore it. I mean, front center today we had the city mayor, Haddad, we had the state governor, Alckmin, we had Dilma's new special secretary of human rights, Ideli Salvati, we had Padilha was there, we had a whole host of politicians, because it's easy PR, really, isn't it? To whether they it sounds very skeptical, of course, but whether they really believe in the cause or not, they are using it, and using it very successfully, of course, because media is there, we're there, and it's one of those events where the world suddenly takes note. There's interest in this from the world. If you get 1 million people on the streets, that's good. That's good PR, and any PR, as they say, is good PR.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Shall we wrap up, or shall we? We have to talk about the final lineup, isn't it, for the Seleção this week?
Oh, we have it already?
Yeah, on Wednesday. That's going to be the final list.
Oh, right, okay, sure.
We could just briefly talk about it, and then make a kind of a bet.
Could I ask about the Pride March?
Of course.
Yeah, sure. Not so much the Pride March, but what do you think? Do you think Brazil is becoming possibly, should we say, more tolerant or more polarized in terms of acceptance, etc. Well, from what I can make out, there's a kind of like a movement for both. There's
Exactly. We're bipolar.
Bipolar.
Yeah, exactly.
Very bipolar. Yeah.
I mean, there is, but today if you take from the general public, I haven't looked at any recent polls on this. I'm not sure if there have been any, because I think it's turning into a kind of topic where people are just getting on with it. We know that Brazil now technically has gay marriage, although it's not a law, it's a working resolution. Brazil has gay adoption. Really, you don't see the churches exactly coming out to try and stop that. It's kind of gone through now. They are what the evangelical benches and the kind of right-wing factions there in Congress are trying to do are trying to stop it infiltrating education. We've seen that on a number of occasions. We saw that with the so-called gay kit a couple of years ago, and we've seen that with the recent. It was highlighted recently with this "I Don't Deserve to Be Raped" campaign. They were pushing for gender identity to be put sort of front center in children's education, but those evangelical rights and right-wing factions in Congress are dead against that. So you're right. There's a polarization, but I think if you take it's difficult to tell because I'm in the middle of a cosmopolitan city. I'm in the middle of São Paulo. I'm sure if you go to out in Acre or something like that, you're going to find a lot more people who aren't at the level that people in the middle of São Paulo are. But if you take these gay prides as any kind of acid test of what people are thinking, then it's a family day out. There are people there that clearly aren't gay, that clearly aren't there for the protest. They're there to kind of embrace the festival-like atmosphere, and it's certainly my friends, which my very small poll that I could take of my friends certainly don't have anything against gay people, and I think the younger generation come through see it very much as normal.
And how long have you lived in Sao Paulo?
I've lived here for a year, and before that I lived for 2 years in Curitiba.
Oh right, okay. And I saw recently, in fact it was this year, a couple of months ago, there were two young guys that were attacked downtown in Sao Paulo. That was this year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And that news always makes headlines, but I think the situation is worse up in the northeast. Salvador has the unenviable title of homophobic murder capital of Brazil, if memory serves. So yeah, there's still work to be done, and everybody at the press conference this morning that opened the Pride March said that there's no resting on the laurels here. Everybody needs to be pushing forward with this, and not just in São Paulo. You can make regional laws, you can make state laws, but until they push all these things through federally, then there's always work to be done. And all the time, as you say, that we're still getting headlines where certain people have murdered, and it's sometimes murdering their own children. There were cases where people came out to their parents and they were either evicted or beaten to death. There's still work to be done. There's no doubt about it.
Who was that idiot right-wing congressman in Rio who said that having a gay son is just basically it means you didn't give him enough beatings or something like that? I mean, that's the kind of level of mentality that we're dealing with here, right?
But
Jair Bolsonaro.
It's the same guy. It's the same guy who paid a plane to show a flag that thank you military committee because of you we are not Cuba.
Oh right, okay.
But every country has nutters. You go to the UK, we've got gay marriage, gay adoption, gay everything you want, but you've still got members of the UK Independence Party coming out saying that gay people somehow influence the weather. So I think any country, every country has its nutters. They make politics more colourful, but I think the general, the general public are now on their way to being pretty well forward. And actually, South America, at least, is pretty good in that regard. If you look at other countries such as Russia, where these laws are going backwards at a rate of knots, you look at South America. You've got Uruguay, Argentina, Brazil, Chile, I believe. I even think Ecuador has some kind of recognition of civil partnerships. So it's actually quite a forward-looking liberal continent in some respects.
Okay, yeah, fantastic.
Very good radio, man.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
Should we talk about the final list then? We
Yeah.
shouldn't talk
think-
too long, but just to say
Hello?
hello.
Yeah.
I haven't heard a thing.
Nor have I, man.
Mauricio, are we?
Can I do my goodbye bit now?
Mauricio,
I
are
don't
you
know
with
anything about
us?
football.
No, don't worry. We just disappear. We
No,
don't
you
say.
don't have to worry about that.
We disappear like thieves in the night. That's all. We don't say goodbye. Yeah, I mean, I haven't got.
And we don't have to say anything else. Just to mention that the
Why don't you two?
Squad call up will be at Wednesday.
Why don't you two? Why don't Ben and I disappear now, and you two just have a quick conversation about the squad lineup, and then we'll leave that and then we'll take that as a lever.
We'll talk about next week then. Yeah. So just to wrap it up, I'll talk to Leo about this, and then we finish. And what's the song in the end?
We're going to go with the same one at the beginning. Same one at the end and same one at the beginning. So I have the. Or maybe we could choose different ones. No, let's choose different ones. Okay, so in that case we'll go. In that case, we'll go with two different ones. We'll go with Legião Urbana, Índios to go out with. Or maybe we should go. Listen, I'm going to listen. I don't know which one of the songs is more, how do we say, intense, is going to be more punchy. So we're going to start with whichever one's punchiest, okay? And Índios is a pretty punchy tune. It's got that big drum beat, that cha, cha. So if that's punchier than the other tune, we'll start with that one. Or Au Contrario, we'll do it the other way around, okay? So, but we'll put both songs in. Leo sent me the other track, so we'll put both tracks in, okay? So
should I just introduce Legião Urbanas then?
Yeah, just say right now. Just say this week's intro. Oh fuck, we're gonna have to do it both ways then. So
Yeah.
So yeah. So okay. So I think we'll intro with Legião Urbana and we'll go out with the other tune. How about that? Okay, so this week's intro tune is Legião Urbana, Índios.
Okay. This week's intro tune is Legião Urbana, Índios. Okay.
Perfect. Now this week's outro tune is
what?
I don't know. Leo?
What's the name of the song? Assis Ribeiro?
Okay, Camisa Listrada by Assis Valente.
Assis Valente.
Carmen Miranda.
Listrada by Assis. Okay. So
I was actually away from my notebook, so I should.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I'll just make the final comment, and then we talk briefly about the.
I'm trying to keep my mic down.
Okay. So that's it for this week.
Okay.
The noise. Okay.
I'll make just one more.
Okay, I'll go. So that's it for this week's Brazil podcast, and I'll leave you with Camisa Listrada by Assis Valente, a tune that was very popular in the voice of Carmen Miranda. Is that all right?
That was okay. There was a bit of interference though. Just say it again, please.
Okay. So that's it. So that's it for this week's Brazil podcast, and I'll leave you with Camisa Listrada by Assis Valente, a tune that was very popular in the voice of Carmen Miranda.
Okay, that's good.
That's good. Guys, I'm thinking. Well, we could talk about the Seleção next week, couldn't we? Because we have loads of time. Loads of good radio, and we're not going to talk about anything specific.
Okay.
That is certainly if we wanted to, and if we have time. I would even suggest we do on Wednesday, if we have time and chance of doing that. We do a podcast on Wednesday just to talk about that. But I think we
Okay.
can actually do that next week. Is that all right?
I'm in.
Yeah, we could do that. We could do that. Let's just give me let's just say one. We need one more kind of line just before. So we finished with our topics. You've said that's it for this week. Let's
Okay.
because it just ends a little bit too. It ends a little bit too sharply, I feel.
Okay. Okay.
What
So
about
should I
topics
say?
we look out for this week, or is that you don't want to make it too time sensitive?
Okay. So should I say that's it for today? That's it for now. That's it for this show.
Yeah. So okay. Just say Just say something like, okay. Thanks, guys. Thanks to Ben. Thanks to Leo. Thanks to Sam. Something like a general kind of just a bit stretch the goodbye out. Say thanks to everybody for listening. Say watch out in the week for the Brazil selection is going to be called. The Brazilian World Cup selection is going to be called, and then just say I'm Mauricio Savarese, and this week's outro tune I leave you with da 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 da. Just stretch out the goodbye, and it doesn't have to be anything
all right.
specific, but just stretch it out so it doesn't end so abruptly.
No problem.
Cheers.
Okay. Okay, guys. So thank you very much for. Okay, guys. Thank you very much to Ben, to Leo, and to Sam for this week's program. It was a lot of fun. My name is Mauricio Savarese. You heard the Brazilian. My name is Mauricio Savarese, and this is the Brazil podcast. No, this is too drastic, isn't it?
You've been listening to.
Yeah, you've been listening. I'm Mauricio Savarese, and you've been listening to the Brazil podcast. I'm Mauricio Savarese, and you've been listening to the Brazil pod. I'm Mauricio Savarese, and you've been listening to the Brazil podcast, a podcast that is made by independent journalists in Brazil discussing Brazilian issues. That's all right. Is that all right? No.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, and then I leave you with.
We can use I'll leave you with. I have to remember the name of the song.
Don't worry. You said it before. I'll just edit it. I'll just switch it around.
Okay. I'll leave you with Camisa Listrada by Assis Valente, a tune that was very popular in the voice of Carmen Miranda.
Mm-hmm. And just say something like one last thought. Watch out for the Brazil national selection on Wednesday.
Just one last thought. Pay attention on Wednesday to the Brazil World Cup selection that is going to be made in Rio. Let's hope that Scolari knows how to pick plays. Is that right?
I think that's good. I think we've got enough there. To work with.
Okay. So should I stop the broadcast now then?
Yeah, stop the broadcast now. Yeah, and we'll have.